if we go to a meditation course, e.g. in Sri Lanka, do we meditate 24/7? No. No, I have an anecdote about this one. Well, I was a substitute teacher in a meditation center in Chiang Mai once. I got the chance to sub for the head monk who teaches foreigners. And I found out that his way of teaching was based on another teacher's method under our head teacher, who taught that this monk taught that you should do a certain number of hours a day. So in the beginning it would be 8 hours. In the beginning I think it would be like 6 hours. 6 hours of meditation a day. And then the next day or after a couple of days he'd say, today 2 more hours. So today 8 hours of meditation. And they were instructed that every day they should count how many hours they actually meditated and report to the teacher how many hours they meditated. So when I got there, I found all these foreign meditators, I have to say, totally stressed out and either feeling proud of themselves because they made the number of hours that they were supposed to do, whether it was 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, whatever. Or else feeling depressed and upset because they didn't make the formal meditation. They didn't make the number of hours of formal meditation. So they were supposed to do 8 hours of formal meditation and they only did 7 or they only did 6 or so on. So at first they were, the assistant was asking me, how many hours are you going to give him? How many hours are you going to give him? Because she knew that you're supposed to give him hours, and she was afraid that I was changing the teaching format. So she asked me, how many hours are you going to give him today? This guy had done 8 hours, I think. And he said to me, today I was supposed to do 8 hours, and I did 8 hours. And, he was clearly stressed about this. This was not easy for him. 8 hours isn't so difficult, but he was having a lot of trouble. So I looked him in the eye and I said, very good. Today I want you to do 18 hours of meditation. And his eyes got so wide. And there's this stress level. His blood pressure must have gone through the roof. And I smiled at him. And I said to him, here's what I want you to do. When you get up in the morning, I want you to sleep not more than 6 hours. And as soon as you get up in the morning, I want you to say, lying, maybe rising, falling if you notice the stomach. When you sit up, I want you to say sitting. When you want to sit up, you can say wanting. When you stand up, you can say wanting to stand. When you go to the washroom, walking. When you brush your teeth, brushing. When you eat your food, chewing. I want you to be mindful like this throughout the day. Practice as much formal meditation as you can, comfortably. But don't tell me how many hours a day of formal meditation you did. I want to know, I want you to be mindful from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, 18 hours later. And it doesn't mean you're always mindful, but it means you're practicing. So that's meditation. No, you're trying to be mindful for 18 hours. And so you have 6 hours of break. For 6 hours you can sleep, and during that time you're not meditating. And he was actually quite relieved by this. It was something quite doable. The other thing it did was, when I arrived there, I had been there for some while before, and I was watching the foreign meditators, and they weren't meditating. They would do their power meditation, 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting. But when they weren't doing the formal meditation, and they would sit around chatting, or they would wander around and look at look at the flora and the fauna and watch the novices playing games with each other and driving the tractors and so on. The novices driving the tractors. But they weren't being mindful, and so I just kicked butt when I got them to do this 18-hour thing. Suddenly, it was, the assistant who looked after the foreigners. He said, suddenly they're not causing trouble anymore. I don't have to watch them all the time, because they're too busy trying to be mindful. They don't have any time to talk, and that was I think it was part of my instruction, is that whatever you do, you're to try to be mindful. So this means not talking with your friends during that time that you're eating, or even just sitting around. Try to stay to yourself and try to. So I coached them on day-to-day mindful or moment-to-moment mindfulness. That's much more important. It's much more important how much of your waking hours you're mindful of. That doesn't really answer your question. Your question was whether it ever gets to 24/7. Or the answer I have to give is that sometimes you do practice this way, 24 hours a day. I don't know about the 7 part. Maybe for a few days you can do 24 hours where you're trying to be mindful. No, you can get down to 4 hours sleep, or not sleep at all. Depends on the meditator. As you go on, it gets a lot easier, and you get less interested in things like sleep. There are monks that will go without sleeping for days, weeks, months on end, because they're practicing meditation. Sometimes you fall asleep sitting as well. If you practice all night, you may not be awake all night. You may be, but you're trying, so you can count it. So you sit there and you fall asleep for half an hour or so on. But you can consider that trying, no? It's a part of your meditative experience. You're learning about your inability to control your mind and your body. It just shuts off by itself. So I think that should give you some fairly good background on information on how we approach this sort of question of how much you have to practice meditation. I hope that answered your question.